Hi guys, thanks so much for stopping by. So I will be talking about the snake plant or Sansevieria, and this is what she looks like. I've only had this for less than a year, and I really didn't used to like this before, but then I went kind of crazy in 2019. I didn't have any plants for like 3 years, and so I don't know, I'm like, why don't I just give this a try? And so I did. And now every time I go back to any kind of nursery, it feels like I can't get something as great as what I got. And with the same price point. So I'm kind of hoping like later this year when it's going to be spring and summer, then I could probably check out what would be available and I could add more in my collection. So this is my snake plant right here. And I did just move her away because I put this right next to our staircase, which is close to our front door. And when this was, when the colder climate started, I got worried. And so I moved this somewhere else in the living room. So I will just share with you guys how I take care of this plant, because as you know, being a new plant owner in a specific different species that I've never owned before, you will go through ups and downs and you will figure it out. And also, in a sense, I don't want to get someone else out there to go through what I went through, because when our plant babies are hurting, we all know we're hurting as well. So I don't want anybody else out there to do the same mistakes that I did. I used cactus soil, and this cactus soil that I did use is from Miracle-Gro, and it gave me fungus gnats. Because it gave me fungus gnats and everything else that I did own, I looked online for all the different things you could do to get rid of them. And when I did the dish soap phase, all my plants started to slowly die because I didn't think of it at the time. But when you do add that to your watering, it doesn't matter how often you water. It doesn't matter. What was I going to say? It doesn't matter how often you water or the amount you water, but the thing is, when you're adding something like that, it stays here. When you're adding the dish soap in your backyard, it gets flushed down. So there's a big difference, and that's why plants outdoors can tolerate if you add the dish soap, if in case there's something there like a pest you're trying to get rid of. But for an indoor plant, from my personal experience, I do not recommend. It will like slowly kill your plants. So I don't recommend that. That's why here, I'm going to show you. This became really mushy here because of that. Or it also didn't help that in the beginning I also followed directions from like websites, blogs, and things like that. And they said to water this plant every 2 weeks. And I did that. And then I realized that I read also in a different spot that it won't hurt it if you let it dry a little bit more than just 2 weeks. So you can also water it a little less frequently than every 2 weeks. So what I did was I incorporated the way I water and care for my ZZ plant with this. They use the same kind of soil, which is cactus soil. I water them and fertilize them with an all-purpose plant fertilizer and a bloom booster. A lot of people don't want to do that due to the fact that this doesn't have flowers right now. It can produce flowers when it's incredibly stressed or when you do stress it. However, I've never experienced it having flowers. My mother-in-law has had her snake plant, and it's all just the dark green and like the lines. She's had hers, I would try to say, like 8 years. She's never had flowers at all. So I think the only way that from my opinion right now and from my observation from other people's snake plants, if you want it to flower, you have to stress your plant out. Now, what I was told was 1 week should be okay. I've never done it. I don't recommend it because I've never done it. But if you want to experience that, and you want to go through something like that, you have to stress your plant out, which is something like you put it in a dark spot, it feels like it's gonna die, and that's when they start to produce flowers. Because I believe like any plant that you can propagate through clippings, leaves, and things like that, they usually don't produce a lot of flowers, which in turn can also produce seeds because you can propagate them with just leaves. I don't put this next to a window because it could burn them. When I did put this next close to my front door, it was about 5 feet away from the window because my front door has a window next to it, and the window wasn't very big. It also has an awning, so it doesn't really get that much light. It only probably gets like a couple hours of light before, and now it is in a bright room in my living room, but it is getting light from LED bulbs. Not plant light, just LED bulbs. And I think it's doing really well. And it's been sitting there for weeks now, probably months, since I moved it. I had to cut two leaves out of this because they were mushy and they were dying. And this one isn't mushy anymore right here. Let me show you guys again. This one isn't mushy anymore because I'm not overwatering it. But there was a time that it was being, I think there was kind of a sign of probably like really dying or just being suffocated by the Dawn and the dish soap, the Dawn dish soap. And also before that, probably because I was watering it twice a week. And so the initial problem I had was the cracking. If you see crackings on your snake plant, it's overwatered. When it's mushy, it's extremely overwatered. So the first sign is the cracking, which I had. And so I thought, I won't water it as frequently as I did. And I gave it like an extra day or two. That didn't really work out. So I had 3 leaves that were starting to get mushy. Now I have some new growth right here. And this does have something to lean on. That's why it's kind of leaning on kind of low right here. I used to put this in my banister and my staircase. So it would just kind of lean like that in the wall as well. But in my living room, it does have a wall to lean into, but here it doesn't, so it does that, but it's okay. It's doing okay. I would suggest the way you water this is I would give it about 1 to 2 inches. If it hits my knuckle, which would be about 2 inches, if any part of my finger comes out and there is dirt that sticks to it, I don't water it. So I'm going to do that right now just to demo, and I can feel it right now. It's still wet. So like that. If you see your finger coming out and it's slightly damp and the dirt is sticking to your finger, I would suggest not to water it. Even though the top is incredible, like look at how dry that is. Even though the top is very dry, I would suggest you wait for about 2 inches, 1 to 2 inches of just extreme dryness, because a little bit goes a long way with this plant. So this is more like the hardy plants that you could get. You might, I think the last time I watered this was about 3-4 weeks ago, and it's still kind of damp in there. So I wouldn't really suggest you water it until later on. And from what I've noticed, if this is kind of similar to how I've been watering my Thanksgiving cacti, my jade plant, my ZZ plant, and this one, if this is going to be in the similar kind of context and how you take care of it in regards to the soil and the watering schedules, then what I would suggest, the bigger this plant gets, the deeper you need to go. So with this one, because it has gotten really tall, it has gotten taller than when I first got it. I believe when I first got it, it was probably like this tall, and it has grown quite a bit now. And these here, I think weren't here, or they were like really tiny. So they have grown, they have, improved and things like that. I would suggest, when they're, I think that is just really a more of a typical, gardening 101. The smaller the plant, the more frequently you probably need to water. And that is due to the fact that their roots are probably also smaller. And this is what you see from that. This probably has, the root system is probably, of course, have grown a good amount since I bought it. I did transplant it right away, and it's not one of those that are root bound. So this should have more room to spread out and grow. So, again, as I've said, the bigger the plant, I would say the less you need to water. So if in case for this particular plant, I believe it's been 3-4 weeks. I do have a plant journal, but I do write down when the last time I water, what I watered it with, and yada, 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 all that. And whenever there's growth, let's just say for this particular plant, I'll take a picture a few times in a year and I put in my plant journal for that section for this plant, because my plant journal is sectioned per plant, regardless if I have like 5 different plants from the same kind of plant. I will still separate them. Like I have, I think like 8 different plants of fiddle leaf fig trees, but I do segregate them in their own way because each plant is going to be different, just like each person is going to be different. So that's what I would suggest. Again, so here are the signs, just in case you're experiencing them. When you get the cracks, you are overwatering them. And so what I would suggest you do is wait. Minimum, if your snake plant is maybe 20% smaller than this, or even smaller than that, I would suggest 1 inch. 1 inch, I always suggest 1 to 2 inches to make sure it's not damp. So if it's 1 inch, not damp, and it's starting to brown a little bit, like when you touch the leaf right here, like when I touch this leaf, it feels really thick and lush. But when you touch your leaf and it's a little bit thin, then probably, and also browning in a sense, and you haven't watered it in, let's just say 2-3 weeks. And when you dip your finger in there for 1 inch only, it is very, very dry. It's sand dry. Then I would suggest you can water it. If it is the same size, I would suggest you wait for 1 to 2 inches. You put your finger in there. You can test it a few times in a week. You can test it once a week. It just depends. Because just so you know, like just because it's damp today doesn't mean it's going to be like completely bone dry tomorrow. It's a slow, it's slow for this particular plant, and this doesn't have direct sunlight because I'm worried it's going to burn. So because of that, it also doesn't really ingest and absorb and digest a lot of the nutrients that I do provide, which is the water and the fertilizer that I do give. If you're interested in everything that I have used with this one and currently am using, it will be in the description section below, so do check that out. Again, there is no set schedule for this plant. I really wouldn't suggest that. The rule of thumb is with every plant is once a week. However, you have to make sure you get your plant acclimated to your environment. You want it to be acclimated in the specific spot in your house. Each spot is going to be different regardless. So you want to observe how much light it's going to get when it's a sunny day, how much light it's going to get if it is a gray day. You can supplement it with just a regular LED bulb. I pick the daylight brightness due to the fact that I feel like it also helps me mentally. I have mental issues now due to healing from multiple head traumas. So when it is gray out, it really, really drags me down, like onto the point like I'm almost depressed bad. And also like everything is just horrible and I'm so negative and it's just I'm sluggish and things like that. And as soon as I turn on all my lights, my LED lights, there's just a big difference. So if you're experiencing that too, especially now in the colder months and it's darker more than it's brighter, you don't have to spend really a lot of money and like one of those tchotchke like UV lights and stuff like that. I will link down below what I use and what you can use. You can just get like a regular bulb that is LED, so you don't really want to rip your hair out when you get your electric bill, as well as you just pick the daylight setting or the daylight brightness. Because if you pick like the soft white, the soft warm color and stuff like that, it doesn't really give you the same oomph as it would be if it was in daylight. So I did change all of my lighting since the summer into LEDs, and I did switch them to make sure they're all LED daylights, because we did switch it to LEDs before, but we chose like the soft white or whatever else, and it just doesn't give me and from what I've noticed, the plants the same amount of brightness and light that they would probably benefit more if you just pick the daylight option. They're usually about the same price, if not identical pricing. It's just a different kind of brightness. So that's another tip there. You don't really have to spend an exorbitant amount of money for plant lights. From my experience, even for this particular plant, plant light might be a little too harsh. I don't use plant light with this. I have never used plant light with this. I have only used, again, the light. I'll link down the light bulb below. And that is what I'm using. And I'm also using a floor lamp with it. And this is actually, the lamp would be like above there, above this plant. And it works fine. I was initially worried just because this plant can be, it can scorch its leaves when there is too much light. However, I think it got acclimated with my environment, and so far it hasn't really scorched any of the leaves, so I'm really glad about that. And again, the lamp, the bulbs, I will link it down below. And I change all my light bulbs in my house that take the same base that bulb would. And I remember the other day, it was incredibly gloomy. It was just kind of like gray outside. My mood was significantly lower, and as soon as I turned on like the ceiling lights, which are like, multiple lights with that LED bulb, like it was a complete difference immediately. So if you are also suffering with that like I am, that's what I'm doing. And I am also taking ashwagandha and vitamin B. I forgot. I will link that down below, what I'm using, just so if there's anybody out there that needs the help, that's what I'm doing, and it does work. So if there are any other questions you have in regards to this plant, let me know down below if I didn't cover it. I have never propagated this plant ever. I am not very good in propagating anything. I'm better when it comes to growing from seed. Propagating, not so good from my end. They always get mushy and die. I follow the directions. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm probably doing something wrong because they're just not growing. My husband can propagate everything and they grow beautifully. I just can't. So I just don't want to damage my plant for the sake of wanting to do something that I'm not really an expert on yet. I'm not comfortable with that. So aside from propagating, I have really put this plant through the ringer, and it is a very hardy plant. A lot of people, there are people that have killed this plant, and if you have killed this plant, you probably overwatered it. You probably used a all-purpose potting mix, or this is completely like, depending on the plant death, on what really happened, then I can probably assess as to what really happened and what the cause of death was. But this is really a hardy plant. It doesn't grow as fast if it doesn't get a lot of light. It can tolerate low light. I wouldn't suggest you put it directly in the window, although I have seen in like TV shows and movies that they do that and the plant is okay. But again, it's a TV show and it's a movie, so I don't really know if those are even real plants or not. If there is, again, anything else that I didn't cover with this plant, let me know down below. I would always answer all your questions. If you have any comments, you want to talk about plants, you want to talk about this plant, I am planning on buying this plant like more, the same color, different colors, because I really, really love this plant. It is very easy to take care of, and I love it. I love how tall and thick these are, the leaves now, because these weren't very thick when I first got them, and now I think because I do feed it fertilizer, I think it does help. So again, any questions, comments, suggestions, should you want to talk about plants, which I could talk about all day, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys all the time. I hope you enjoyed my video. You're going to give it a thumbs up. I hope you will subscribe if you haven't yet, and of course the bell so you're notified every single time I do upload a new video. Thanks guys, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!